Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Stuck in Oil Podcast. This week's episode is sponsored by the like and subscribe button so that way you get all the notifications when we upload new podcasts like this one. In this week's episode, I want to talk to you a little bit about my placements in the foster care system. It hasn't always been the best for me, and I am the oldest of 4 kids. We were first put in DCS custody in 1990. We were put in its office. We were waiting for the right placement to come along, and be in a situation where we can get the care and need that we had to have in order to be kids and grow up and to grow into better adults. And we stayed there for a few hours up until I think it was the next day or maybe even 2 days. I can't remember quite that great about it because some of the memories are not there. I tried to block out some of the bad memories that are happening at the time. But one of the things I will say is these caseworkers oftentimes work too much. They work tirelessly trying to find us the placement that we needed to go. And I think an officer actually took us in that night and kept us until they found a permanent foundation the next day or so. Or at least another placement, so to speak, not so much a permanent, but a placement. And the thing that was very frustrating to me is here I am with my brothers and sister, scared to death, don't know what was going to happen, don't know what's going to be the next outcome of it. And we are split up. We had a very close-knit family, and we were very loving family. We did a lot of things together. And then all of a sudden we're split up, okay? I take some of the responsibility for what the actions were at that day that we got split up was my behavioral problems because of some of the things that happened in the past, some of the abuse that was going on in my own family. And I wish, our grandparents or somebody would have took us in so we all could have been together, or at least a foster home would have took us all in to be together. The problem I see in the foster care system with the placements isn't so much the placements itself. It's just there's not too many adults willing to take the older kids in. And that's where I had suffered because I was ripped apart from my family, and yet they are put into a home together and I'm put by myself. Now, with that being said, there are some positives that happened to me down the line. But the very first placement I went into was a home here in Tennessee. I'm not going to say where exactly it's at because for privacy reasons. But this lady was very abusive. She was an alcoholic. She oftentimes was screaming, hollering, yelling at me, different things. And granted, being a teenager going through this, I could have contributed to the problem by my behavior problems and stuff like that, saying things that probably weren't the best. At times I was angry, I was frustrated about the system, I was frustrated at what was going on to my family, being ripped apart, and I could have been one of those contributors. But at the same time, this lady had no right to cuss me, she had no right to scream at me. There was times that things were thrown at me. Luckily, I had the best caseworker in the world that I see, because this lady worked very, very hard for me in order to find a different placement. Now, the next placement I went to was a little bit better, but there were still some problems there. There was often times that this person was all about the money. Now, they weren't abusive towards me, but they were all about the money. They weren't about me and caring for me. There was many nights that I was left alone with no food in the house and stuff like that until the next day when they came home from the bar or wherever they were at. I'm not no judge. I can't remember exactly where they were at, but they left me unattended a couple times. And then finally we had a meeting with my caseworker, and I explained to her the values and some of the things that I wanted to do. I said, look, I'm getting tired of moving around. I'm tired of going from home to home. Granted, some of these were my fault. Some of these were, the people that were trying to take care of me's fault. But I want to find a more stable home. I want to find more stability in my life. I want to be able to grow into a better person. And I can't necessarily do that by the way I'm moving around constantly, day in and day out. And so we decided the best solution was for us is they actually moved me to a place called the East Tennessee Christian Home in Elizabethton, Tennessee. That's where I really began to mold and grow into a person, and where I really began to see the real Mike Hines. And it has been many, many years that I had to do this and go through the moving process before I came here. Here at the East Tennessee Christian Home that I lived at, I was taught the values of God. I was taught the values of life. I was taught the values of family. Now, there was also some sponsors that came in and took me into church and pretty much raised me by themselves, which they know who they are. I don't have to keep on saying their names. And they raised me into the person I am today. And I'm so grateful for that because, with the alcoholism, the abuse that was in my family, things of that nature, I'm glad I was taught these things because it made me into a much better person I am today. And I'm so grateful for that. But there are some things that I think could change in a foster care system to better some of these kids, especially when you have numerous siblings and you want the best for them and you want them to have more stability. It doesn't matter their age, I don't think. I think you should still try your best to keep them together. There's proven studies that show that the kids that stay together are often the ones that do much better in school, academically, socially, things of that nature. And I am a firm believer that is very true because, I look at my brothers and sister, and they went to a different home versus me. I was on my own. They strived and thrived and done better for their lives. And I started to improve mine as well, but it was very difficult at the time to deal with these kind of things and the emotions that we're going through. You got to figure I'm 15, 16, something like that when I finally came to East Tennessee Christian Home. I'm thinking nobody loves me, nobody cares for me, nobody wants me. Who wants a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, and nobody wants to adopt me into a family of my own. But luckily for me, I had sponsors that actually didn't get the legal paperwork for it, but those are the people that raised me, and I consider mom and dad, and still to this day. And they are very amazing people. And, going through this, I learned that there's some things that we can advocate in order to help these kids. Let's try to keep them together. Let's try to get the counseling together with them so they can improve themselves, improve their lives, improve, some of the heartaches and pains they went through. Not all these kids are bad. They just come from bad environments. And mine wasn't the best environment either, but at the end of the day, I had the willpower and the courage and the want to change things. And I think I did that for the most part. I'm just so wound up about how people think that all these kids are bad, how all these kids are bad kids, they're criminals, they're this. A lot of people label these kids that come in the foster care system, and it's not fair to them because they didn't ask for what is going on to them. It just happened to happen. Now, going back a little bit further in the beginning, I'll explain to you how many different homes I was in. I didn't do it in the beginning for a reason because I want to get to the point. I was in an excess of 30 different homes. Some of them, like I said, were my fault for behavior issues, but a lot of them were ended up because people didn't either care for me, they were all about the money, they were abusive. These kids need people to protect them. They don't need people to keep on being abusive to them, because when you become abusive to them, then the behavior issues become more harder to control, and these kids ended up doing worse behaviors than what they did before. And there's proven studies that go and talk about these things. You just have to do your own research on it, because there's a lot of good kids in the foster care system, and all they want is somebody to love them, care for them, treat them like as if they were part of that family. And I think if we start doing that, we can change things, we can change the future for these kids, and we can show them love unconditionally, because that's, after all, that's all they want. They want to better their lives. And like I said, I would just want to talk a little bit about my story and the placements and some of the things that I was going through at the time. So, with that being said, I hope you all will stay tuned for more episodes, and I hope you will like and subscribe. So, I hope you all have a great and wonderful day. Peace and love, guys.